quick announcement before the video starts. Do you want a cucumber? Do you want one of these? Our good friend Style Player, who we've been meeting at Tankfest a few times, actually made a few of these. And on the request from the community, Style Player actually started kind of semi-mass producing these. If you would like one of these, there is a link provided in the description below where you can go to a document that you can download, and there you can fill in your personal information. And when that's done, export it as PDF and send it to cucumberproducer@hotmail.com, and you can get one of these in your own home. For every cucumber purchase, there is a small chance that you will get a golden cucumber. This is a limited time deal. The sale is open until the Dropbox link is closed. All the profits do not go to us. It goes purely to cover the production for these cucumbers. Check it out. Hello, my name is Zwhatsh and welcome to Awesome Epic Guys. Today I'm bringing you a top 10 list of all the shittiest tanks in the game. So all of you seal clubbing stat padders out there can know which tanks to avoid, and all of you masochist memers out there can know which tank to 3-mark next. Lol. Before we start, let's break down the rules for this list in particular. First of all, I'm using stats gathered from woodcharts.eu, which means that everything in this video is information taken from the European client. Rule number 1. All tanks on this list has to have lower than 49% average win rate. If they have higher than that, they're not shit enough to make it into this list. However, contrary to many other
top 10 bad tanks lists
on YouTube, this list will not use win rate as a primary factor. Instead, I will be listing the least played tanks server-wide. This means that the lower the amount of average games a tank has, the higher it will be placed on this list. By the way, by average win rate and average games, I mean taking the average games and average win rate combined from all the players on the EU client. But why average win rate? Because the highest probability that people play these tanks so little is because they're utter shit. And trust me, you will see that it actually makes sense. However, if two tanks has the same amount of average games, the tank with the least amount of win rate will turn out on top. Got all of that? Great. Just a few things more.
Pop it a little more!
There will be 3 categories in this list. High tier, which is tier 8 to 10, mid tier, which is tier 5 to tier 7, and low tier, which is tier 2 to tier 4. I will be showing 3 tanks at a time for each placement in this list. Just one final thing is that I will avoid premium tanks and artillery tanks in this list, because premiums are just in higher regard played by more experienced players, which will not show accurate data, and artillery is played by artillery players. Let's go. Number 10. This one goes to Indian Panther with 169 average games, T21 with 94 average games, and AT1 with 12 average games. I'm not very surprised to see the Indian Panther here really. It seems to get onto every shitty tank list ever in history. The lack of any good armor probably makes all the Russian medium tank players flip their keyboards. The T21 has 10 degrees of gun depression, which is always nice, but it won't neglect the fact that it has the worst mobility of all the tier 6 lights combined, with armor that derp tanks has wet dreams about. The AT1 really is a weird one. Did you know it was Russian? Yeah, me neither. The overall gun statistics seem to be pretty good, but I guess the fact that it's literally blind with like 250 meters view range holds it back from doing anything at all. Number 9. This one goes to T34-2 with 164 average games, IKV 90 Type B with 94 average games, and Universal Carrier 2-pounder with 11 average games. Not to be racist, but all these Chinese mediums look the same. Bad gun handling, bad aim time, bad shell velocity, and bad penetration. A perfect recipe for rage quitting with style. The IKV does pack a punch gun, although with only 240 alpha at tier 7, it truly leaves things to be desired, especially since it's stuck on a huge box of IKEA cardboard. The Universal Carrier really has a 2-pounder with 121 premium penetration at tier 2. Bruh, how are people messing this one up? Probably because it's low tier and people only play empty light, and anything without armor is deemed trash. Like the Universal Carrier 2-pounder. Lol. Number 8. This one goes to Judas 03 with 153 average games, KV 13 with 91 average games, and Vickers Medium Mark II with 11 average games. The Judas has the highest win ratio out of all the tanks on this list, just FYI. I'd say it's a good tank actually, with an epic gun, mobility and camouflage. My only guess to why it made it into this list is because of all the scrubs who do not understand how the siege mechanic work. Lol. The KV-13 is one of those weirdos that's cramped between two tech trees, so there isn't really any reason to get this tank unless you're a collector. The armor is good for a medium, but it's Russian after all. The gun selection is quite lacking, however. I can see why many players decide to not play this tank. And the medium 2 is basically a tier 1 tank, but with tier 2 matchmaking. F.
Number 7.
This one goes to Batchat 12T with 121 average games, Churchill 7 with 89 average games, and 10TP with 10 average games. I'm actually surprised to see that the Batchat 12T made it into this list. I thought a lot of players would stick around with this tank to collect all that juicy experience for all the tanks that follows it in the tech tree. But I guess the tank is just so horrible that as soon as people has the XP they need, they just throw it in the trash, never to come back again. The Churchill 7 is one of my personal favorite tanks, because of some good memories I have in it. But memories aside, nobody can deny the fact that this tank is obsolete. The armor might work against lower tiers, but as soon as the enemy starts penning you, you have no ways of avoiding the fire, as your mobility is basically a T95 league. The 10TP suffers a lot from the stock Polish tank syndrome. Basically, all stock Polish tanks are utter shit, although even fully upgraded, this tank is pretty lackluster. The penetration on the top gun is on par with most tanks, one tier below it. RIP.
Number 6.
This one goes to TVP VTU Concept with 118 average games, ARL V39 with 88 average games, and Cruiser Mark 1 with 10 average games. Is anybody surprised to see the TVP here? Famously known to be one of the worst tanks in the entire game. It's a tier 8 tank with tier 6 armor, if not even worse. A freaking cardboard on wheels would outperform this tank. The good old ARL also lands on this list. Also famously known to have one of the, if not the worst stock setups in the entire game. The gun selection is quite decent. Unfortunately, they are all mounted on the ARL V39. At least the tumor on top provides with some decent view range. Did you know that the Cruiser Mark 1 has 15 degrees of gun depression? Quite remarkable indeed. I guess it doesn't matter when your armor and mobility is on par with a deceased donkey.
Number 5.
This one goes to WZ 111 1GFT with 115 average games, Panther SFL 4C with 80 average games, and Renault FTAC with 9 average games. Take an ISU 152. Take away the mobility, shave off the alpha damage, and remove all the Russian bias, and you get the WZ 111 1GFT. Truly an abomination, stitched together from broke down tractors and wet diapers. The flak bus is a peculiar case. The gun selection is amazing, however, the gun arc on the top gun is extremely limited, which means that you almost always have to turn your entire tank to turn the gun, which results in loss of camouflage value. Combine this with an absolutely enormous profile and absolutely no armor whatsoever, and you have a highway ticket directly to the garage with some added salt to your wounds. The Renault FTAC is a true meme. It looks hilarious and it has a hilarious gun selection. The mobility is on a super heavy tank standard though, and the armor is basically on par with artillery. So if you enjoy losing every game, this should be your number 1 pick.
Number 4.
This one goes to the Sheridan with 108 average games, the Crusader with 73 average games, and the Panzerkampfwagen 1 with 9 average games. Speaking of memes, The Sheridan with its 152mm gun launcher can sure be a blast against those juicy, lowly armored vehicles. However, not even the huge sack of potatoes in the front can save this tank from a high influx of getting absolutely wrecked by everything and anything. The Crusader really is a tank with high performance potential, with 2k base DPM. However, with only 75 alpha damage and subpar gun handling, you really have to stay in the action for a long while before those numbers start to add up, which greatly increases your risk of getting smashed in the face. The Panther 1. A tier 2 tank with no armor, mediocre mobility, and exclusively armed with tier 1 weaponry. This tank was designed to give the enemy free steel wall medals.
Number 3.
This one goes to Rheinmetall Panzerwagen with 101 average games, the Churchill gun carrier with 71 average games, and Type 95 Hago with 8 average games. The Panzerwagen has the absolute worst win rate out of all the high tier tanks on this list. It does have some good merits to it, good mobility, good view range, and the highest hit points for a tier 10 light. The survivability and firepower is extremely subpar on the other hand. I have heard that really good players enjoy this tank, however. The general public though, not so much. Oh damn, the game carrier made it to another shitty tanks list. Not as number 1 though, haha. Do I even need to speak about this tank? I wonder what could be shittier than the infamous game carrier. The Hago. This is one of those tanks that you just simply do not play. Who sits down to play a party of World of Tanks and say to themselves, today I'm gonna play the Hago? To be honest, I have no experience with this tank whatsoever. So I'm just gonna read straight from the World of Tanks wiki, lol. Good gun selection, but very thin armor and low accuracy. There you have it, folks. The Hago. Top 3 on this list of shitty and unpopular tanks. The Hago. Yep. Top 3. Okay, let's move on.
Number 2.
This one goes to AMX65T with 74 average games, Renault G1 with 62 average games, and the Chi-Ni with 8 average games. Oh boy, the AMX65T, man. A super heavy that lacks all of the qualities that a super heavy should have. Well, I guess it has one. It's slow. And this sluggishness combined with a complete lack of armor, well, I guess it had some armor, but practically no armor. Anyways, this combination really just kills this tank so hard. It's more of a support tank than a super heavy. And even as a support, it struggles doing anything. You keep poking this tank with a stick hoping it will do something. But it just doesn't. The Renault G1 is quite the meme. With a stock configuration you can make it look like a thick AMX40. Memes aside, this is basically a bootleg M4 Sherman. It does some things better than the Sherman, but generally it's more sluggish with less survivability. The main factor that keeps people from playing this vehicle is that it's on a sub-branch that leads nowhere. Chi-Ni. What's the deal with all the weird-ass low-tier Japanese tanks? Who even plays these things? Oh, right. Nobody. Oh well. This thing also packs 15 degrees of gun depression. However, with 30mm of pen you will probably be just as depressed as the gun depression. Haha!
Number 1.
And finally, the shittiest, most unpopular tanks in the game. We said 113G FT with 59 average games, IKV 103 with 50 average games, and FM42 with only 5 average games. Man, tank destroyers really suck, huh? The We Said 113G FT is just a huge package of pure defeat. Take a Jagdpanzer 100, remove the alpha and the armor, and compress it into this compact, easy as to pen box of shit. And you have the We Said 113G FT. The only thing that this tank has going for it is great heat pen. Almost as good as the ones on the Jagdpanzer 100. But if you already have the Jagdpanzer, why even bother? At least it looks funny. The IQE 103 is the only tank in the entire game that exclusively carry heat rounds. And oh boy, this really makes this tank interesting to play, doesn't it? With that amazing derp gun handling and non-penetrating hits because of the shitty accuracy that constantly hits spaced armor and does 0 damage to Russian light tanks. Ho ho! Good times. And the PVLVV-FM42. Also known as Panzervärnsluftvärnsvagn. Say that 3 times fast. What's the deal with shitty Swedish tank destroyers? At least you can mount the machine gun on this tank for some hilarious memes. Other than that, I'm not really sure what this tank is going for it. Funny name? Yeah. And that's all, good folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please consider giving it a like. And maybe even subscribe to the channel. But also please let me know in the comments below if you could predict what tanks would appear in this list. Or if you were surprised by the tanks appearing in this video. Also please let us know if you would like to see some more top 10 lists. And what top 10 list you would like to see. Because, you know, we need more top 10 lists on YouTube, lol. But yeah, thanks for watching. And like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you and bye bye.